This will be a brief overview and comparison of the new Roomba J7 Plus versus the older model Roomba. Initial unboxing and first time test and some comparisons of the J7 Plus to some of the older features. This video is not sponsored or compensated in any way. I'm just doing a quick video today of a comparison and rundown between one of the older Roombas that we've had running for a number of years to the new J7 Plus. Just purchased that. So just unboxing the new J7, and then we've got the previous 880. So the 880's been running for about an hour every day for the past 7 years. It's done pretty well, but a couple of issues and problems with that. So comparing that to what they're doing with the J7 now, and we'll see how it does in a run comparison. All right, so the J7 Plus, got the smaller box that came with it. So we've got extra filter, got the extra brush that goes on the ground, and of course the manual in here, and the vacuum itself. Got the J7, it comes on the base. Let's get that unwrapped and all ready to go. Power cord that goes with the base. Top sides of the vacuums, a couple differences. The new J7, they've removed the top buttons and they just have the single button up here, so everything's done more through the app. On the older model, you had the buttons for docking, clock setting, scheduling. You had the IR sensor here for connecting to the dock, and then the center button, which is the one that remains on the new one. So as far as overall here, one of the main issues that we had after a handful of years on the 880 was the plastic got brittle on this top handle that would pop up, and that eventually snapped off, so that's gone now. Another issue that we've had is the IR sensor up front is raised, so this would get caught on some things around the house. So that's gone now. We'll see how that compares over time. Underside of the 880 versus the J7 Plus, pretty similar. We're still using the same roller system. This was one of the reasons why I decided to try this one out, because we do have a lot of pet hair, and these made sense as far as being able to remove and clean those. Similar as far as the indicator wheel up here, 2 charging points, brush system, which kind of showed up folded up because of the way it was packed. Hopefully that straightens out. And then you've got the removal bin on either side. You got your sensors to keep it from dropping off a ledge or stairs. And you've got a similar system on the J7 Plus. Get your latch release and then your rollers that pop out for cleaning. So you can pull hair and whatnot off of these. And then on the older model you had the 2-pin release. Popped out the same way. So looking at the 2 bins, get the older 880 at the top release and slid out. And the older 880, the little motor that would pull in debris was actually built into this. So you just pop your tray open, you can see the motor housing right here. And one of the issues that happened over time was plastic got brittle and broke where the little tray is supposed to release. So We'll see how that holds up on the new one. And then the filter would just pop out on the old one like this. And the filter area was quite a bit bigger on the older 880, maybe because they needed that for less suction possibly. So then on the new J7, we've got the release button. And that's kind of got a hinge system where it pulls out. So on the new one, the removable filter right here is quite a bit smaller. It comes off about as easy. Then you have your collection bin right here. Release button to open that up. And you've got the port where the base vacuums out the debris coming out of there. So basically the bin just creates a vacuum, and that opens this up and pulls that out the bottom and up into the base. So as far as the overall design on these, one of the main issues that we had was debris being able to pass through the opening here where the suction pulls it through. So you can see on the J7, it doesn't really look like they've opened that up much. It's a little bit taller, whereas this one was wider. But again, maybe the higher suction on this one helps to pull more through, whereas on the old vacuum, some of the debris was getting stuck as it tried to pass through that port and into the bin. The other main difference on the J7 is, of course, the navigation. So on the older model, they just relied on the bumper up front to let it figure out where it was at, and it would map the room based on bumping into things. So with the new model on the J7 Plus, they still have the bumper feature, but they also have the infrared sensor and the camera. So this camera is supposed to detect things in front of it in the room and keep it from having to rely on the bump sensor in order to map things and hopefully avoid cords and things like that. So differences on the bases. We've got the older 880 base. So it was more convenient to be able to stash under a piece of furniture or something like that. But it would dock with the IR sensor up top here, and that was basically what would interact with the one on the vacuum and get it back onto the base. So after a few years, one of the big issues that we had was with the contacts on here. Basically it rolls over the top of these contacts and pushes them down in order to make contact with the charging points on the vacuum. So after a few years, the little spring mechanism broke on these and had to be taken apart and fixed, which I was able to do a couple times and still working at this point. So looking at the J7 Plus, they're using a similar system. The springs feel a little bit more rigid, maybe a little bit stronger on these contacts, but it's a similar pressure type of system. So it'll be interesting to see whether those have the same issue with the spring breaking inside after a couple of years. And so now instead of the IR sensor leading it back, they have basically the kind of QR code that the camera on the front of the vacuum is reading. On the older model, a lot of times it would have issues lining up with and connecting to the base. So on the new model, it's got this platform that it rolls up onto, basically guides the wheels into these indentions. So kind of the idea is to make it easier for it to line up and make contact with the charging points here. And another big difference being now that you have the vacuum bin, this is basically designed to line up with that green piece on the bottom and vacuum out the bin into here where you've got the bags. So you've just got an empty extra bag here, and then you've got the one that's actually plugged in and connected. So we'll get the new one charging and see how it does, run a comparison. Alright, so each of the vacuums has had a day to do their thing on the same floor plan. So just a rundown of the after effects. So with the older 880, we have the usual buildup of fur and whatnot. We do have two medium-haired dogs that really put it to the test. So this is typical of what we see a day later with the old 880 model. Got the filter out. So that's 1 day of collection with the two dogs that we have. So that's about the amount of debris that the new J7 is picking up. So just a comparison, still has some of the fur wrapped around the roller, so that's a daily thing for us. Opening that up, cleaning that out. As far as the bin goes, the collection system in there, you can see that it's actually not developing the buildup that the old one always has. It always ends up trapping some of the fur in that collection bin. So here's the new J7. Doesn't seem to have the amount of fur sticking in there. So the J7 does use the vacuum feature once it's done vacuuming, so that is a lot of the reason why you don't see the fur buildup in here. But if you look at the difference between the two, this is, I think, maybe going to be a little bit harder to clean out and knock out versus the old 880 filter. So as far as the bin goes, that vacuum feature definitely does allow it to clean out the debris more between each use. I did test the camera system, so it's got the front mount camera. It's supposed to detect objects, so I put a few things down. It did actually detect some of the cords and things like that and went around them, so that feature worked. So overall impression of the J7 versus the older 880, was it worth the buy? I would say yes. It does seem to do a better job of picking up debris. The camera system and the navigation definitely works better with the front mount camera detecting things and mapping versus the older system where it just had to bump into things and map, and it would tend to get stuck underneath a lot of different objects around the house. So I think the one downside with the new J7 might be the bag system. Might have been nice to have a system where you could just dump the container out without dealing with bags. We'll see how that goes in the long run. But overall, after the first day, it definitely seemed to do a better job. It's going to be some different features and some different cleanup. The camera system and the infrared sensors got pretty dirty, so there's going to be some additional things to keep up with as far as maintenance and cleaning that weren't there on the old one. But I think it was worth the upgrade, and we'll see how it does over time.